Hello! Not too long ago now, I made a video talking about Ben 10 Protector of Earth. But in order to get all the footage I needed, I had to beat the entire game in like 2 days because I have horrible forward planning skills, which resulted in me being a bit more negative toward it than I otherwise would have liked to have been. And also forgot a few things, like that the game has health upgrades that would have made those boss fights a hell of a lot easier. Oopsie. So this time, where we're going through every other game in the Ben 10 series, I think I'm just going to be a bit more general and give an overview of them instead of trying to fit the entirety of like 6 or 7 games into like 20 minutes. And I'm only going to be covering up to Omniverse, which I promise is not out of spite for the reboot, but just because I haven't played any of those games and so don't have all that much to say about them. I'm just going to get straight onto it from where we left off last time, so let's get to it. First up, we have the Ben 10 Hyperscan game. So this one will require a bit of explaining. So in 2006, there was a console released called the Hyperscan, which, if I'm remembering correctly, had like a normal disc system like most consoles, but also had a sensor where you would have to scan included cards in order to unlock certain parts of the game. A console that was obviously very successful with a whopping 5 games total. And so you would have to scan an alien card in order to change forms, which does sound really annoying, but then I remembered how obsessed I was with Skylanders, so 80 cards were released in total for the game. The ones that weren't aliens gave you like assistance from Gwen and Grandpa, and others gave you increased attacks and abilities. Some of the power-up cards had the aliens on them, but didn't let you play as them. Can you imagine how gut-wrenching that would have been as a kid? The game was only bundled with 6 cards, 2 of which were alien cards. And the worst part is that in order to get the other ones, you would have to buy booster packs that are randomized, so you wouldn't even be guaranteed to get a different alien. Why didn't this sell well again? The game was $20 USD at launch, but getting all of the cards would cost you at least $130. I really wanted to give this one a go, but you can't actually play it without buying the console, which is not happening. And I couldn't find a working emulator, which makes sense because I imagine it's very hard to emulate a console that needs cards to do anything, and also because nobody on the planet knows what a hyperscan is. I read that sometimes the game will intentionally give you the wrong alien when you scan a card, like the Omnitrix does in the show.
The Omnitrix is a prototype and doesn't always function correctly.
Which sounds really cool, but I'm sure gets very annoying after a while. I will give them some credit though. With all of the cards, this one does actually let you play as all 10 aliens. I'm just saying. Next up, we have the DS port of Protector of Earth, which people really wanted me to talk about last time, but I left it out because I didn't ever really play it as a kid. I borrowed it from the library about once, but only played it for about 1 level before I realized that I sucked at it. It feels almost like a demake of the PS2 version with certain things missing. Like at the end of the first level, you don't fight the giant Vilgax robot, you just randomly find an Omnitrix shard and move on. You DS owners didn't know how hard we had it. Otherwise, it mostly has all the same mini-bosses and enemies and the same roided up Vilgax at the end. And don't worry, you can still spam the 4 arms rock move. It's so interesting to see like a simplified version of a game I know so well. Not that I am going to play it that far, but I am curious if the plant boss is as bullshit on the DS version. The real thing to talk about though are the cheat codes. Unlike the PS2 version, this one lets you unlock Upchuck as a playable alien, as well as having Galactic Enforcer and Gwen skins for every alien, which is way cooler than what I got. That and the soundtrack is so good for no reason. But after all of this time of hearing about Upchuck, it's only now that I'm learning that he's not even a playable character. He's essentially just a glorified power-up because every time you turn into him, he just clears the screen of enemies and then you turn back. And that's it. Ben 10 Alien Force was another one that I owned as a kid on PS2, but unlike Protector of Earth, I really didn't enjoy playing it. I think I only picked it up a couple times and didn't even get all that far into the game. I remember it introduced Kevin and Gwen alongside like 5 of Ben's aliens, which sounds cool, but it was actually the reason I didn't like it as much, because I just wanted to play as Ben. But the game makes you play as them for specific sections of the levels. Like the show, Kevin has the ability to absorb certain materials throughout levels. I think for me, the problem was just that getting to swap between different colors was not nearly as fun as changing into different aliens. It's pretty much exactly the same playstyle as Protector of Earth, with the combo system and beating up every enemy on screen to progress. Even the enemy introduction screens are back. The aliens were split across the systems a lot more though this time. Both versions had Swampfire and Humongosaur, but Big Chill, Jet Ray, and Spider Monkey were home console exclusives, whereas the DS version was the only one that had Goop, Echo, and Chromastone. Fuck Brainstorm, I guess. Alien Force introduced the new character Gorvin, who would later appear in Omniverse, and he's totally not suspicious at all.
More accurately, I knew your grandfather, Max Tennyson. I have been away since then.
He's evil, by the way. Of course. From what I played, we're getting footage for this video. The gameplay is pretty repetitive. You literally just beat up these enemies, move forward, beat up those enemies, move forward again, beat up more enemies. Ooh, I wonder what's gonna be next. Now looking back on it, I never actually made it past the second area of the game, so I guess I just never really gave this one a proper shot. There is far less content than Protector of Earth here. There's way less enemy variety with only Forever Knights, DN Aliens, and the Pickaxe guys throughout the entire game. Of course, the biggest offender here is that there are only 4 cheat codes. It's also not very long. I saw walkthroughs on YouTube that only go for about 3.5 hours. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but yeah, I just never had much of a connection to this one. The Alien Force game I do hear a lot about is Vilgax Attacks, which of course I never played. This one brings about the first major change to the visuals, with it now being from a third-person perspective. Though gameplay-wise, it's more or less the same idea. It only took 4 tries, but this is the first Ben 10 game where you can actually switch between 10 different aliens without needing overexpensive cards, but not Alien X. Never Alien X.
Vilgax is invading the Earth.
Then I'm just in time to warn you that now is not the right time to use Alien X.
Man, poor guy. He does get used at the very end of the game though, but only through a cutscene. Yeah, I know. But obviously, since he's not an option as a playable alien, you are instead given Cannonbolt, which I am not complaining about. And finally, they're giving my boy Brainstorm some justice. Or if you have the DS version, you get Upchuck again, who is actually a real playable character this time. The DS ports of these games have progressively been getting more and more shit because the portable version of Vilgax Attacks lets you play as Mr. Smoothie.
We're not friends anymore. We are not friends anymore.
Vilgax Attacks has 7 stages, each set on a different planet, and is a lot more puzzle focused than the past games, which is probably why I didn't play too much of it. Every alien has a different puzzle mechanic as well. Spider Monkey can zip across the webs, Goop can bounce off walls, and Brainstorm can illegally download movies. What I do like is that if you are stuck with a puzzle and don't know what to do, smashing it with Humongosaur is generally a viable option. There are also ship levels in between each stage to break up the gameplay, though they do give you the option to skip it every time because I guess they must have played it. Alien Force sure got a fuck ton of games for no reason. The last one of this era is The Rise of Hex, which I've never touched because I didn't know how DLC worked. So because of that, this one has only really existed as a wiki page entry for me. This one is a digital-only game and was only for WiiWare and Xbox 360. And because it was never released physically, I think it's impossible to buy the game at all now. This game also features all 10 aliens, but again swaps out Alien X for Lodestar, who has the ability to sort of float in the air a bit. The story is told through riveting cutscenes that use PNG images of the characters that look like my old PowerPoint presentations. I love that they use like the stock poses. You just have Lodestar standing there uninterested as Hex fucking dies. Okay, now we're getting to the one that everybody really wants to hear about. For the longest time, Cosmic Destruction looked like the coolest Ben 10 game ever made. The jump to a new generation of consoles made the visuals look so incredible to me. I wanted this game so bad. It took a few years for me to actually get it, and when I did, it was the Wii version, which I got for $15 apparently. The literal worst possible version of the game. And of course, at the time, I didn't know the Wii wasn't up to the same standard as the PS3. I just thought the game sucked. Again, we're rolling with 10 transformations as the standard, but because Ultimate Alien introduced 5 brand new, very marketable aliens. Amphibian, Armadillo, Terraspin, Water Hazard, and Energy are all here, alongside the ones that got ultimate forms: Swampfire, Echo, Humongosaur, Big Chill, and Spider Monkey. Fuck you, Cannonbolt. And you could even play as their ultimate forms during select parts of the level. You also get to play as Way Big, but that's only for the final boss, and we'll get to that in a bit. On top of all of that, there were also some extra aliens that you could only get depending on which console you had. Because if you had the PS3 version, you got Forearms, or if you had the Xbox 360, you got Wrath. Or if you had the Wii version like me, you got the cold and empty feeling of betrayal. This game is a favorite of the Ben 10 community for the Polter's Altairi, an upgrade to the Ultimatrix you assemble throughout the game, and Evil Way Big, which I heard a ton about from fans before I even played the game. It's so popular in fact that they straight up lifted it for the climax of Ben 10 Destroy All Aliens 2 years later. Cosmic Destruction makes you pick between 4 aliens that you can switch between at any time, but you have to enter a larger menu to swap them out instead of just letting you switch between all of them at once, which is really annoying. Then again, most of my time in Vilgax Attacks was spent doing this. So I'm pretty sure my emulator version of the game was definitely working as intended. I think my copy of the game is haunted. And again, this one is a lot more puzzle focused, so as you can imagine, I am a huge fan.
The Great Wall is just through this mountain pass. The Great Wall is just through this mountain pass. The Great Wall is just through this mountain pass.
I skipped over the stories of the last games, but because people like the one in this one so much, I'll just briefly talk about it. In this one, an evil Toku star is coming to Earth, and Ben has to collect pieces of a Galvan artifact called the Potus Altayari to give himself the power to be able to stop him, which sees you traveling to different countries around the world like Japan, China, and Japan to put it back together. I always appreciated that they went the extra mile here to redesign old characters that weren't in the show and have them returning as bosses like Enoch and Crab. What everyone loves about this game is the final boss where you fight evil Waybig with Waybig. God, it's so fucking cool. And at the end of the game, this evil Waybig is revealed to be Albedo. No way. And this brand new super powerful upgrade for the Ultimatrix just crumbles to dust. So that was all for nothing. Maybe it's the fact that I was playing the PS2 version. Maybe it's the fact that I had a haunted emulator. Maybe it's the fact that Wrath and Forearms are locked behind exclusivity and I will never be able to play as them ever. But I gotta be honest, not a fan of this one. But fuck Cosmic Destruction, because the real best Ultimate Alien game is Ben 10 Galactic Racing. This one has a whole 15 different characters to play as, and the visual of Vilgax driving after Ben in a go-kart is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. This was another library rental for me, so I only played a little bit of it, but once you get past the Ben 10 theming, it is just another standard kart racer that I could never get too much out of. So the game's explanation for why Ben and a bunch of his aliens and worst enemies are competing in a Mario Kart-style tournament is because the Galvan created racetracks across the galaxy to celebrate some planetary event happening or something, and so they invited the best racers in the universe to it. That's it. To be fair, not sure what else you could come up with. There's not really much of a story outside of that, and why would you want one? The aliens and characters this time are way more of a random selection. You got Ben, obviously, Ultimate Humongosaur, Wrath, who is not a console exclusive this time, Heat Blast from the original series, Big Chill, Ultimate Cannonbolt, Ultimate Echo, Fast Track, Swampfire, Amphibian, Spider Monkey, Forearms, Kevin, Vilgax, and Zascare, and on the DS only Diamond Head. Guys, are we forgetting someone? The one in this video that I have the most fond memories of is Ben 10 Omniverse on Wii U. This game is the first and only time I've borrowed a game from the library and actually beaten the entire thing before I had to return it, so that goes to show how much I loved it. Whereas the other Ben 10 games were multiplayer, but I always played them on my own, I actually played Omniverse with my brother and had such a blast. Mainly because we kept dicking each other over, but that's not important. But I want to tell you why this one is the best one, okay? Listen to how many aliens you can play as in this one, right? Cannonbolt, Diamond Head, Forearms, Heat Blast, Wild Mutt, Blocks, Shock Squatch, Grav Attack, Accelerate, Wildvine, Feedback, Eye Guy, and Arctiguana. Whoa. And of course, even all this time later, the DS version still had extra features because they had Crash Hopper. Fuck you. I always saw this one as a spiritual successor to Protector of Earth because the gameplay does borrow a lot from that, and it is definitely a game that is designed to be experienced with a player too, though one of you gets to play as Ben while the other had to be Rook. So now I am beginning to realize why I love playing this with my brother so much. They also bring back the QTEs for bosses in this one, and as much as I don't like them normally, seeing them back in a Ben 10 game is pretty cool. I don't know if the game would be anything special if I was to replay it all the way now, but I just have such fun memories of continually murdering my brother as Blocks that this one will always be my favorite. Omniverse 2, on the other hand, I was really looking forward to recreating the magic of the first game with my brother, only to find that it's Temple Run. It's just Temple Run. You start off with running segments where you have to switch between lanes and you look at Subway Surfers. I don't have to explain this. Eventually, there are segments where it becomes a beat 'em up like the other games, but then you just do that for 2.5 hours. I haven't played this one all the way through, so I can't say too much about whether it gets better, but there's always a small part of me that'll hold a grudge against it, and that's about all of them. Thank God. There are 2 games in the reboot series, but as I said, they just didn't arrive fast enough, so I guess I'll just have to cover them some other time. Or never.